I had been in a relationship with my now ex-girlfriend for 6 months. I am 21 years old, and she is 20. We met at university, where we both study. She is from another country and had come here specifically for her education. Throughout the academic year, I never had the chance to meet her parents in person. Although she often talked about her home life, she never emphasized details about her family's financial situation or status. She carried herself with humility and simplicity, so I never suspected much about her background. When summer vacation arrived, she invited me to visit her and stay at her home for a while. Her parents extended the invitation, and I accepted. It was during this trip that I began to realize how different our upbringings were. While she never flaunted it, I could tell quite quickly that her parents were considerably wealthy. They lived in a large house. Their lifestyle was clearly more affluent, and everything about their home and demeanor spoke of comfort and privilege. In contrast, I came from a more modest background. My father had left my mother for another woman when I was just 6 years old. Their separation had been painful, and my father effectively distanced himself from my life after that. For years, he made no effort to reach out or be involved in raising me. My mother shouldered the responsibility of raising me alone, never remarrying or even seriously dating again. She sacrificed much to ensure I had a stable upbringing. Even though higher education is largely free in our country, moving to a big city for university put considerable financial strain on her. I took up a part-time job as soon as I started my studies to help alleviate some of the burden. But even with that, there were times when I struggled to cover all my expenses. My girlfriend, aware of my situation, had often offered to help financially. Although I appreciate her concern, I was too proud to accept. I later realized she must have shared some of this with her parents, because when the invitation to visit them came, they graciously paid for my plane tickets and assured me I wouldn't need to worry about any expenses during my stay. While part of me felt uncomfortable about it, I was grateful for their generosity and kindness. Upon arrival, my girlfriend picked me up from the airport and took me to her parents' home. They greeted me warmly, and from the very beginning, they seemed like genuinely nice and considerate people. They made a conscious effort to give us space and privacy, while also extending invitations to show me around their city. A few days into my stay, they suggested taking me and my girlfriend sightseeing. I happily agreed, and we spent a pleasant day visiting museums, landmarks, and other attractions. The experience was enjoyable, and I felt that we had bonded well. One evening, her parents proposed that we join them for dinner along with some of their friends. The friends, a couple in their 50s, were introduced to me as John and Kate. During dinner, I found myself genuinely enjoying the company of John and Kate. They were cultured, well-mannered, and engaging conversationalists. Interestingly, they worked in publishing and media, industries I was deeply interested in. Our discussions were stimulating, and I felt that I had made a positive impression. After dinner, we returned to my girlfriend's house. As we settled in, I overheard her mother making a casual remark to her father. She mentioned something about John going somewhere with his wife. This confused me, as I had been under the impression that Kate was John's wife. I interrupted and asked for clarification. Her parents exchanged a brief, knowing glance before explaining that Kate was not John's wife. They told me, in a matter-of-fact tone, that John was married to another woman, but had been openly seeing Kate for quite some time. Their relationship was well known within their social circle, and apparently, John's wife was aware of it, but chose to turn a blind eye. This revelation disturbed me. I struggled to process how nonchalantly they spoke about infidelity, as if it were entirely normal and acceptable. The more I thought about it, the more it unsettled me. It brought back memories of my own father's betrayal and how deeply it had affected me and my mother. I voiced my discomfort and questioned how they could associate with people who were so openly unfaithful. My girlfriend's parents dismissed my concerns with lighthearted comments, suggesting that these things were common in their social circles and that there was no need to be judgmental. This angered me. I felt as though they were trivializing something that had caused real pain in my life. I lost my temper and expressed my disappointment, telling them outright that I found their attitude hypocritical and morally questionable. I said things I probably shouldn't have, criticizing them for enabling such behavior and implying that their values were fundamentally flawed. My girlfriend, to my surprise, immediately defended her parents. She argued that not everyone views relationships in the same rigid manner, and that I was being unfairly harsh. Our disagreement escalated, and before long, it became evident that we were fundamentally misaligned in our perspectives. Realizing that this was something I couldn't overlook, I decided to end the relationship. It was not an easy decision, but I knew I couldn't continue dating someone who not only accepted, but defended values so drastically different from my own. For nearly 2 decades, John and Kate had been lovers. The way my girlfriend's parents casually brought it up stunned me. They spoke about John's marriage as if it were an afterthought. John, they explained, had a wife, children who were now adults, and a home he shared with them. Yet, for a few days each week, John would stay with Kate. This arrangement was discussed as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. My girlfriend's mother even chimed in, revealing that John had once considered leaving his wife for Kate. However, it was Kate who dissuaded him. She had no interest in becoming a wife or mother. The life she envisioned for herself did not involve those roles. She preferred solitude, content to remain independent while maintaining their relationship. I sat there, absorbing the weight of their words. But the longer the conversation went on, the more I felt my stomach churn. I detest cheaters. The mere thought of infidelity disgusts me, and I harbor deep resentment for those who enable it. My father's unfaithfulness devastated my mother and fractured our family in ways we never fully recovered from. Sitting there, I felt repulsed by the fact that I was under the roof of people who not only condoned such behavior, but were close friends with individuals engaged in it. To them, John and Kate's affair was nothing scandalous. It was simply the way things were. Unable to hold back any longer, I asked if John's wife was aware of his relationship with Kate. My girlfriend's mother, in an almost dismissive manner, said she didn't know. They had never spoken to John's wife. From the moment they met John and Kate, they saw them as a couple. It was always the two of them, and they only socialized with them together. My girlfriend's father interjected, speculating that John's wife must have figured it out over the years. He reasoned that keeping a relationship secret for that long would be nearly impossible. Hearing this, I couldn't contain my outrage. I told them bluntly that they were terrible people, just as awful as their deceitful friends. My words left them visibly shocked, but they maintained their composure, attempting to defend their stance. They rattled on about love being complicated, insisting that no one truly knows the intricacies of someone else's relationship. They believed it was not their place to interfere or judge. To them, John and Kate's affair was a private matter, something best left untouched. But I couldn't see it that way. I told them I wanted no part in this and left the room. My girlfriend hurried after me, clearly upset. She was angry that I had insulted her parents, pointing out that they had been nothing but welcoming to me during my stay. I told her that didn't excuse their actions. I asked her directly if it bothered her that her parents maintained such close ties with adulterers. To my dismay, she shrugged it off. She said that John and Kate were her parents' friends, not hers. It wasn't her business to get involved. I was incredulous. I told her she was just as complicit as her parents. If she had any moral integrity, she would urge them to sever ties with John and Kate. Moreover, she should encourage them to tell John's wife the truth. I made it clear that if her parents refused, she should consider cutting them off altogether. I reminded her that I had distanced myself from my own father when his infidelity came to light. It wasn't difficult for me. Family ties didn't justify immoral behavior. She began to cry, accusing me of being unreasonable. She couldn't fathom abandoning her parents over something she considered an abstract moral issue. Unlike my father, her parents had never wronged her. They had always been supportive and loving, and she saw no reason to sever her relationship with them. I told her that didn't matter. In my view, supporting cheaters and acting as if their behavior was acceptable was reprehensible. Realizing we were at an impasse, I told her I was leaving. Our relationship was over. I couldn't continue to be with someone who didn't share my values. I spent everything I had on a plane ticket for the next day. I was a little short on cash, but a friend of mine lent me the rest. I promised to pay him back as soon as I could. My girlfriend tried to reach out to me several times after I left, but I ignored her messages and calls. To me, there was nothing left to say that I believed that I acted in alignment with my principles and values, and I felt justified in the way I responded to the situation. I cannot fathom being in a relationship with someone who tolerates cheating, even as a passive observer. Furthermore, I find it difficult to respect someone whose parents seem to lack moral integrity. However, some of our mutual friends have expressed their belief that my actions were unnecessarily harsh. They feel that I offended my ex-girlfriend's parents during a time when I was a guest in their home, and they argue that I should offer an apology for my behavior. I do not share this perspective. I was present in their home solely because of their fortunate financial situation, and in my view, their wealth does not warrant any special treatment or deference on my part. Reflecting on the situation, I now recognize that my reaction may have been unfair to my ex-girlfriend. The overwhelming response I have received has led me to reconsider my actions and acknowledge that I might have been in the wrong. I realize that my anger and sense of betrayal clouded my judgment. I felt deeply hurt when she chose to align herself with her parents rather than support me, despite knowing the personal trauma I have experienced due to my father's affair. This history made the entire situation more painful for me, and I allowed my emotions to dictate my response. I now accept that my ex and I are not compatible, but I believe she deserves an apology and an explanation for my behavior. I want to provide her with closure, even if I recognize that certain aspects of my actions were indefensible. In offering this explanation, I feel it is important to clarify a few points that I believe are relevant, though I acknowledge that they do not excuse my behavior entirely. My ex-girlfriend and her family are not from a vastly different cultural background, where social norms might differ significantly. We both come from Western Europe, where adultery is generally not viewed as acceptable or normal. During our conversations, her parents explicitly referred to Kate as a mistress and described John and Kate's relationship as an affair. This characterization made it clear to me that the situation was not one of polyamory or an open marriage. Their language suggested that John's wife was likely aware of the affair, but unable to confront it directly, possibly due to the difficulty of hiding a long-term affair that had persisted for nearly 2 decades. Despite their assertion that John's wife might be aware, I felt uncertain about the truth of that claim. From what I gathered, John lives out of town and frequently spends several days working in the city. This arrangement provides a plausible cover for his prolonged absences, making it easier to maintain the affair without raising suspicion. The entire scenario struck me as profoundly disrespectful to John's wife, who, in my opinion, was placed in a subordinate and demeaning position despite being the mother of his children. Even if she had knowledge of the affair, I suspected that her acceptance stemmed from financial dependence or a desire to preserve family stability, rather than genuine comfort or approval of the situation. The perceived injustice of the situation weighed heavily on me, and I reacted strongly because I believed that such actions were harmful and morally unacceptable. Nevertheless, I now understand that my reaction, driven by personal biases and unresolved emotions from my past, may have been disproportionate. While I still stand by my core belief that infidelity is wrong, I accept that I could have handled the situation with more grace and empathy. Moving forward, I intend to apologize to my ex-girlfriend, not because I believe I was fundamentally wrong in my values, but because I recognize that my delivery and approach could have been more considerate. I hope this explanation provides insight into my perspective and the motivations behind my actions.